بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: جددوا إيمانكم. قيل يا رسول الله وكيف نجدد إيماننا؟ قال: أكثروا من قول لا إله إلا الله. رواه أحمد والطبراني. إسناد أحمد حسن. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Renew your iman." It was asked, "O Rasulullah, how do we renew our iman?" He said, "Frequently say La ilaha illallah." Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Renew your iman." It was asked, "O Rasulullah, how do we renew our iman?" He said, "Frequently say La ilaha illallah." عن أبي ذر رضي الله عنه قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: ما من عبد قال لا إله إلا الله ثم مات على ذلك إلا دخل الجنة. قلت: وإن زنى وإن سرق؟ قال: وإن زنى وإن سرق. قلت: وإن زنى وإن سرق؟ قال: وإن زنى وإن سرق. قلت: وإن زنى وإن سرق؟ قال: وإن زنى وإن سرق على رغم أنف أبي ذر. رواه البخاري. Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Whenever a slave of Allah said La ilaha illallah and died believing in it, he surely entered paradise." I asked even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He replied, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. I again asked, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He repeated, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. I asked the third time, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He emphasized, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen, despite your disapproval, O Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Whenever a slave of Allah said La ilaha illallah and died believing in it, he surely entered paradise." I asked, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He replied, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. I again asked, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He repeated, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. I asked the third time, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen. He emphasized, even if he had fornicated and even if he had stolen, despite your disapproval, O Abu Dhar. Note, Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu was surprised that despite such major sins, how could a man enter paradise while justice demanded that he should be subjected to punishment? Hence Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam emphatically to remove his astonishment that despite the disapproval of Abu Dhar, the man will enter paradise, implying that even though he may have done sins, but because of his iman, he will turn with repentance and get his sins forgiven, or Allah will, out of His infinite mercy, forgive him and send him to paradise without any punishment, or after punishment. In any case, He will eventually send him to paradise. So either the person will make tawbah, or either Allah, out of His mercy, will forgive him, or either he will be subjected to punishment, and after his sins have been cleansed, then he will enter into Jannah. عن علي رضي الله عنه قال: كان آخر كلام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: الصلاة الصلاة اتقوا الله فيما ملكت أيمانكم. رواه Abu Dawud. Ali radiallahu anhu narrates that the last words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were as-salah, as-salah, meaning fear Allah about, fear Allah and be mindful of salat, and fear Allah about those whom your right hand possesses, meaning your slaves and subordinates. Ali radiallahu anhu narrates that the last words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were as-salah, as-salah, and fear Allah about those whom your right hands possess, meaning your slaves and subordinates. So as-salah, as-salah means vigilantly observe, guard, and establish salat. So as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he is giving us two pieces of advice. This was his final advice as he is leaving the world. As-salah, as-salah, to be mindful of salat, to vigilantly observe it, guard it, to be particularly mindful of it. That no matter what happens, salat should not leave our lives. As-salah, as-salah. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is telling us to fear Allah about those whom your right hands possess, meaning the slaves and the subordinates. So generally today, people they hear this word slave, and they try to paint a bad picture of Islam and of Muslims, saying, "See, you guys, you use and abuse slaves." And we say that Deen does not encourage us to use or not to use slaves, but Deen tells us if such a system is in place, then how we should deal with them. So much good. If such a system is in place, then how do we deal with them? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us to fear Allah concerning them. So what does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell us about slaves? Well, first, what does the Quran tell us? If a person he makes an oath and he does not he breaks that oath, then what is the first thing that he should do? The thing that he should do to get forgiven for that oath that he has broken, that he should free a slave. If a person breaks a fast during Ramadan and as kafara, what is the first thing that he should do? He should free a slave. So Deen has encouraged us to free slaves. It has established freedom, emancipation, the freedom of slaves for many things. Any type of forgiveness, any type of kafara that needs to be done, we are told to free slaves. Then if a person, he does have a slave, then what is he told to do? That if he gives him some work, make sure that it's a work that he is able to do. And then if you are making him prepare your food, he's preparing nice, delicious, appetizing foods, tasty foods for you. So you say, okay, thank you for the nice food. And by the way, you have yesterday's leftover, fungated bread. That's for you. That's what Deen tells us? No. Deen tells us, feed them with what you are going to eat and clothe them with what you wear. So if he's going to cook some nice meal for you, then at least, give him some portion of that meal. Treat him in a humane way. Treat him in a respectable way. You're going to wear some nice clothes. Well, also treat him, in a respectable way. So treat them well. This is what Deen is telling us. Whereas we see that just till not too long ago in our North American lands, there was how much of North America is built on the blood and on the sweat of slaves. Look into the history books. Deen tells us to treat, if there is a system of slaves, Deen doesn't tell you to establish a system of slaves, but if it is in place, then how do we behave with them? You deal with them in a humane way. You deal with them in a respectable way. You deal with them in a way that you would like to be dealt with. And what do we see on the other hand? In North America, how have the slaves been dealt with? Open the books of history, it's there. How were the slaves dealt with? There was a particular push to keep slavery in the south of the US. There was slavery in Quebec. There was slavery in Quebec also. And this is till, if I'm not mistaken, till the 1800s, and perhaps even after that. So this is something which is not, you know, these barbaric Muslims. Look, this is just recent, in your recent history too. So please don't bring this kind of objection against Muslims. Islam tells you to free slaves, tells you to treat them right. It doesn't tell you to use them and abuse them, steal them from their lands, put them in, if they do not do the work that you cannot expect anyone to do, then you beat them and you beat them to death. This is not what Deen tells us. So before anyone starts raising any objections against Islam, they should look at the whole picture of what is going on, what is happening in the world. Just like anyone wants to talk about women's rights, want to talk about women's rights, look what's happening in North America. That only in the 1940s have the women been given the permission to vote. Were they given a voice? I think it was only in the 1800s that they were allowed to own property. Before that, they were not even allowed to own property. In France, I believe in the 1600s, they were not even considered humans. They were not even considered humans. And 1400 years ago, Deen gave women a status. They gave women a status.
What does a status mean?
It means that it recognized that they were people worthy of being respected and treated properly and given rights. ठीक है, समझ गए? अच्छा, बहुत अच्छी बात. This is just a little bit on that. So we should understand the context of things, and we should understand that our deen is the perfect deen. It caters to the human nature. It tells us how the humans, based on their nature, should behave. Yes, yeah. It understands that they keep on fighting, and it understands that there will be wars amongst humans. It doesn't promote that we should go and we should start killing everyone. That's not what Deen tells us. Deen promotes safety. But when a fight does take place, Deen tells us how to behave when that is going on. What is off limits, what is permissible. So what is permitted, what is off limits. This is what Deen tells us. Anyways, much longer discussion. Allah give us the tawfiq to have yaqeen on our deen and not just be content with it ourselves, but convey it to others as well. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana